We will continue with where we left off yesterday about anatta, non-self. I find that this teaching of the non-self is a very important part of the teachings because it defines clearly between reality and illusion. I also mentioned the two definitions of anatta. First is the negative, which is no self or absence of a self, and the positive, which is the natural occurrence of phenomena. The first understanding is important in the sense of removing of the negative and wholesome tendencies in the mind. For example, you have a stronger ego-centrism, it means the stronger craving, and so it also means more suffering. Like in one of the suttas or verses, it says, Panchahave, Varahave Panchakanda Varaharo Chapugalo. A burden indeed is the five aggregates, and the carrier of this burden is the person or the individual. And to be able to really understand the meaning of non-self, one has first to put aside all the ideas, wrong ideas of self. For example, a person will undergo Dhamma study and learns about the 62 wrong views and so on, and then he would be able to put aside all these wrong views. But it doesn't mean he has the right view. Not having wrong view doesn't mean he has the right view, He studies the Dhamma and he studies about all this conditioning, impermanence, and so on. Then he has the right view. But this is only in the conventional level. But at least based on the conventional right view, he goes and practices, then he has a deeper understanding of right view. Because right views indicates understanding of wisdom faculty. And so depending on the depth of the wisdom insight, the right views will become more potent. Now, why do we need this deep, strong right view, understanding? Because the wrong view is very deep as a form of latent tendency. For example, when you have a small child who is just born, cute little bambino. Does he have wrong views? He doesn't have wrong views. Does he have right view? No. A simple mind. A human being is also a pure mind until the greed comes out. Or you give him a slap, he cries, wow! There's a latent aversion rising. Latent in the mind of the child. It's a latent tendency for wrong views. But the wrong view is a bit more advanced form of cancer because it involves something that infects the whole thought process because of deep-seated ideas of what is happening. Can a small child be infected with these wrong views? Yes. All you have to do is brainwash him. Drum into him. Ha, 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 ha. In this world, when you die, there's nothing left. All those wrong, any of the wrong views. And then he will be really brainwashed. Not all wrong views are that bad. Especially some wrong views still encourage people to do good karma. But there's some wrong views which are horrible, that it prevents a person from doing any good or doesn't stop him from doing any unwholesome deed. For example, people believe there's no such thing as good or evil. Everything is man-made. So you can eat as much as you like, Enjoy life as much as you like. Kill anybody you don't like, as long as you don't get caught by the police. And there's such people? I think so. Those very powerful and very rich people, and they have this possibility. You see, but this good and evil is not man-made. It's in the nature of the mind. For example, anger, is a very destructive force. We won't go into all these things. What we are here concerned with is that unless you remove all these wrong views, then can there be a possibility to understand the nature of reality? So first you put aside all the wrong views, then you put aside all the greed, anger, delusion and hindrances, and then the mind is clear. Then you go to make your mind purer and purer through meditation. For example, people take up different type of concentration meditation. Some people do a lot of metta, some people do a lot of visualization, some people do a lot of chanting, so the mind becomes very peaceful, very pure, so nice. But still doesn't mean they have right view. They may not have a wrong view, but they don't have right view. Go into a very peaceful, then must be Nibbana. Then a bit wrong view arises. See, when you say that maybe this is Nibbana, still not yet wrong view. It's craving, yes. But you become very attached to it and say this must be wrong way, no other way. Then it becomes wrong view because you know better than everybody. You want to listen to anybody. You're the only one that is right. For example, someone once told me, I have experienced Nibbana. So what is Nibbana? I ask him. It's nothing. And from nothing arises a whole world. I say, I don't agree with you. Of course, he's not happy with me. But no matter what you say, I refuse to agree with you. To me, it sounds like he has just gone into delusion. So I said, no, Nibbana does not give rise to anything. See, from the suttas you can see very clear. From delusion arises formations. How can these people see face to face with delusion and think that it is Nibbana? And he meditates quite a lot. You see? Latent tendency. You have to be very careful. So, you have to start with anatta. I said yesterday, anatta refers to the absence of the atta, and the atta is the controller, everlasting essence of the person. So what you're supposed to do is actually not find out who the person is, but what is the thing that you call a person. For example, who are you? Who are you? Helena Gogel Kolowa. Everybody would agree. But when you meditate, what is Helena Gogel Kolowa? See pain here, pain there, thinking here, thinking there. So whatever you wash comes and goes away. I said, maybe there's still something that does not arise and pass away. What? Tell me what? Must be. Okay, you go and find out. When the Buddha preached the five aggregates, the main thing is to remove the wrong view of the self and look into each aggregate as just natural phenomena. Here are certain things which can be helpful to you for development of this perception of anatta, or should I say, reality. As I say, first you must have put aside all your ideas and philosophies of life. Just put aside all the very clear mindfulness, continuous mindfulness. And put aside all concepts. Just be in the present. That's where we came up to yesterday. Then we say one more thing. You have to have a very clear, lucid perception of the qualities or characteristics of that mind or matter. For example, the earth element, when you step on the floor, is it hard or soft? Yes, you know? Of course you know. But how clearly? Is it clearer when you step on the floor, or is it clearer when I hit your head with a hammer? Of course, when you hit your head with a hammer, it is a stronger sensation of hardness. But it does not guarantee that you get insight into non-self. The main thing is not how hard I hit your head, it's how strong and sharp your mindfulness is. See, because insight arises from the mindfulness, not because of that object. Your mindfulness is sharp and strong Whatever object it comes, you get insight. Your mindfulness seems to be sharp, but still insight may not arise. Why? Because there's something blocking you. Some people have wrong views. When these wrong views arise, his sharp mind can give rise to understanding of worldly issues, but not vipassana. See? Very tricky. So you must have a very open mind to accept reality, whatever it is. So now you have an open mind, I hope. You develop this lucid, sharp mindfulness on whatever you experience every moment. Give you another example, rising and falling, rising and falling. Can you feel it? Of course. We call it, you're feeling directly the wind element. How clearly can you experience it? Then that's why we ask, please describe your rising and falling clearly. It rises and falls. Of course, who doesn't know? Knowing that does not constitute wisdom. But still, if you're mindful, you have some peace of mind. So better than nothing. But man is meant for higher things. So you have to try to watch more clearer. That means you have to sharpen your mindfulness. And so they start describing more things. It comes in stages, it comes in parts, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. And of course, you're not going to see so many things overnight. So you have to keep looking and looking and looking. How much you can observe and pick up depends on your concentration, depends on your sensitivity. Just like painting a picture, you put slowly, you have you add more details into it. Then after some time, when it is lucid and clear enough, then the picture is there. It is just this natural phenomena. The person has no place in it. It does not need a person to be there. And it's better that there's no person there, because there will be nobody suffering. Yeah? Is it better to have somebody suffering or nobody suffering? Because nobody suffering is better. No, and when you say nobody there, there's no controller, but doesn't mean there's no control. Sometimes this non-self is very misunderstood and frightening to some people. So that means that another important quality to add into it is there must be the investigation of Dhamma, searching mind, to keep looking and looking at what more is there in this object, from this one. Now the other things that can be helpful, when you have mindfulness, keep directing your mind to changes and variations of the process. With mindfulness, keep watching all the oppressive and difficult aspects of the object. Seeing the changes sharper and sharper brings your mind closer to the perception of impermanence, which is closely connected with non-self. Seeing all these suffering aspects makes you more detached. And because of that, you were able to get closer to understanding of non-self. Another factor which is helpful is watching your intentions. Intention is a very important point in the processes, especially that which affect the body and mind. Because a lot of this egocentrism and identification is connected with the intentions. When people say, okay, for example, when we were young children in school, the teacher will ask you, what do you want to do when you grow up? Your teacher asks you this. Do you ask people this, Sandra? See, she's responsible for it as well. And then even from young, we are taught the nursery rhyme. So we are supposed to act. Like this. I want to be a sailor, a sailor. I want to be a sailor, am I this way and that. And so that's where the identification and there's the I start coming out. But this is not totally wrong, because in life you need to have some kind of identity. The problem comes if you want to understand anatta. Because you have a very big ego, then you have a lot of deconditioning to do. But a lot of this is embedded in the intention. So when you know intention, usually I want to do this, I want to do that. Who want to do this? I want to do this. Who is suffering? I am suffering. So when you catch the intention, you find that a lot of activities and so on connected with the identification is also the way. So when you catch the intention, and you see there's no ego there, no self there, then you see the condition. When the perception of conditioning is clear, then the perception of non-self is also clear. Which also means that you try to also catch every time the identification process begins, especially when this concept or idea of I comes out. For example, this lady, after meditating for some time, she says, "You happy with meditation?" I say, "Yes." Why? Because when I look at the mirror, I feel I'm more beautiful. So when I look at her, no, she's just as ugly. Actually, I'm not being cruel. She is ugly. So you see, the moment you see a mirror, the attachment comes and the identification comes. So one day you look at the mirror and say, "What's this? Something very strange." You're improving in your meditation. It's interesting because every time we come out, you catch it. Then you find that this is a really troublesome thing because it has been so habitual and this arises so often that people don't notice it, and in a way they become dependent on it to give them some meaning of life. Again, it's not always bad. There's this good self and the bad self. So I want to be a good person, good self. It make you do a lot of good things. So the concept of the ego brings all the good qualities. But it can be a bad. I want to be a bad person. People don't say that I want to be a bad person. They want to be something. No? But that something includes a lot of bad things. I remember once one fellow from Germany came back from far away. I said, "Why do you come back from so far away from your retreat?" He says, "Because I want to come back and vote against Angela Merkel." I said, "Why you want to go? What have you got against Merkel?" She's a woman. A woman shouldn't be the head of Germany. Macho. To him, he thinks it's right, but included in that, is a strong macho ego. So, they don't say that I want to be bad, but they want to do something which they believe in. But that thing reinforces the ego, which includes a lot of bad things. For example, you can see now the IS terrorists. Why? Because they're ingrained into this type of ego that destroys things. So every time that is already becoming very big, very wrong. But the beginning of it is the egocentrism coming, the identification process. When you come to Vipassana, all identification processes will prevent you from seeing clearly reality. So every time it rises, you keep catching them, bunch them all together. Sit there, don't disturb me. You see, the ego concept, is nothing wrong with it. It's just a concept. For example, is anything wrong with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? There's nothing wrong with it. They're just concepts of numbers. But you go for mathematics exam and your mind get confused and you do wrong, give wrong answers, then you get into problem. There's nothing wrong with the number, nothing wrong with the concept. Your wrong view and delusion, and it mix up everything and it brings a lot of craving, anger, delusion, and then it becomes a big problem. So what you need is to put it into its proper place. But when you want to get deep inside, you've got to do more than that, because you have to dwell deep into the nature of Paramattha Dhammas, the ultimate realities. Put aside concepts for a longer period of time. Then you can deepen your perception of anatta, which is the deepening of perception of the nature of these realities. Now this perception of anatta, non-self or realities, comes with when it comes out clearly, you call it the first insight to knowledge. This first level of insight in Visuddhimagga is called Nama Rupa Paricheda Jnana, the analytical insight into mind and matter. I've even come across somebody who does this. He asks, now you know what is mind? Thinking is mind. Yes? Okay. What is matter? Hardness, softness is matter. Right? Yes. Now is mind and matter different? They're different. Good. Then you got the first insight knowledge. No, this is not the point. That is thinking. Now in the actually explanation it says, okay, when watch the rising and falling, the knowing of the rising and falling is mind. The rising and falling is matter. They come together, rising, falling, rising, falling. Yeah? Is it true? Yes, it's true. But it depends on how clear. If a person just watches, yes, this mind is watching there. Is there anybody there? There's nobody there. I don't agree. You have mindfulness, yes, but I wouldn't go so far as to call it insight. You see, what happens, I think, depends on you, is that, when your mind is so clear about these qualities of this wind element, and you're so clear of the nature of the mind element, then of course it sees very clearly the mind and matter and their relationship. See, what happens is the matter is grosser. You can feel it, and then after a while it seems to have a life of its own. Now that is anatta with regards to matter. Yeah? But it may not have the anatta to the mind. So when you still have no clear perception of anatta to the mind, then generally it's not clear enough. That's why there are people who think that the body is very impermanent and so on, but the pure mind is Nibbana, because they don't see anatta with regards to the mind. In such a case, they end up in wrong view, which is worse than somebody without wrong view. Talk about insight. First, insight knowledge of right view is the key thing to purification of views, which means when one arrives at this first insight, one has put aside the wrong views, because one has experienced the reality as it is, underlying all concepts. Consolation. Consolation is that you need not have to have so strong concentration for this basic perception of non-self to arise. But it doesn't mean that you don't need any concentration. Mind must definitely be clear enough. Your concentration is specific to vipassana, momentary concentration. I think we'll stop here today.